we can stay in Uganda, and we look at a recent case study which is just about to be released, and I'm going to invite Stella to present on this. I mean, this is a really interesting case, an impact investment fund that's been, had a reasonable lifespan. It's patient capital, and also interestingly enough, it's one of the very few domestic investment facilities, which that came up yesterday about the need for more domestic impact investments rather than maybe the ones based in the global north. So I'm sure people will be interested to hear from you, Stella, about what was achieved and what you think the future is to some extent. Please take it away, Stella.
So good afternoon to everyone. And I'm happy to have this opportunity to share with you our story from the Yield Uganda Investment Fund, where we are looking at investment-linked business development services. And so it's really a great opportunity for us to have this moment to share with you. So I would like to take you briefly through just the fund model itself, but just to say that the Yield Uganda Investment Fund, commonly known as Yield Fund, is the first locally domiciled fund in Uganda. It's a single country fund, and a single sector is serving the agriculture sector because of the big need. I mean, we have agriculture as where we have lots of jobs, lots of people in Uganda. The bigger population is actually involved in agriculture. So there was a real case to have a fund for agriculture itself. Just a slide to share with you the model itself, where we have our investors, the EU through IFAD, we have the National Social Security Fund, an investor in this, and then we have the FCI investments and the Soros Economic Development Fund. Our fund manager was Power Capital Partners, and we looked at investing or channeling capital to 15 small and medium agribusinesses here in Uganda. The fund life was a 10-year fund right from 2017, and so clearly we are in the evening of the fund life. But what's most important for this session is the business development matching grant facility that the EU financed, and that was managed entirely by IFAD. So I'd like to walk you through what the key highlights or how the design around the BDS itself. So the way in which the BDS was structured is that as the yield fund, the fund manager provided this patient capital, alternative capital for the missing middle. These are enterprises that are not able to access commercial bank financing, but also too big for SACCOs and DSMEs for that matter. And so these were known as the missing middle. And so as the fund manager was able to provide, the patient capital, alternative capital in form of debt or equity, we had the BDS coming in to complement and provide tailor-made kind of BDS to strengthen the operations of these enterprises and also to develop their managerial capacity, but also to address some key constraints that these SMEs or small and medium agribusinesses were facing, but also to ensure linkages with small and medium smallholder farmers that really formed the biggest chunk of their raw material supply chain and was scattered all over the place. So it was important that the BDS also took into consideration to ensure that farmers are really well organized around these enterprises where they would be, providing the market access. And that was the real basis of the impact basis of this type of a fund, where we are able to reach more farmers accessing the market. Now, really how the BDS was designed is that before the fund, the capital was deployed prior to the investment is when we had a BDS needs assessment carried out really in the evening or as the due diligence process was really advanced. And so this is when we had a BDS management company come on board. And for the case of this fund, it exactly was KPMG, where we identified as a capable BDS management company to support this process that went in alongside the fund manager to really look at the gaps in some of these enterprises, but also to ensure that whatever gaps are there in how can they be aligned to the investment that was following through. And then after that stage, we had post the investment, while we are clear that the investment is signed out and it's good, we are deploying capital, is when now the BDS support plan was developed. Now, this was really co-created with the SMEs themselves to ensure the ownership tailor-made to the specific industry companies' needs, and so the plan itself was clear on the scope of the BDS, was clear on the matching grant contribution, and was also clear on how much the company would be putting on the table. At the end of the day, we needed to see that the company had something to bring on board to ensure that they actually are able to pay for the BDS services themselves. Yeah. So now when it came to the delivery, the actual delivery is, just to take you back, while we were having the BDS needs assessments taking place, the BDS support plans being developed, we also had the BDS management company, KPMG. We started out with KPMG and then went to Friends Consult. This is a locally consulting firm here in Uganda. They were building up a database of qualified service providers. We've had from the different sessions about the quality of BDS. And so it was keen that we had a pre-qualified list of BDS service providers that would then fit in to provide the services, the much needed services to the enterprises. And this, the BDS implementation or the support span over a 7-year period from 2017, from the start of the fund to 2024. And then I already shared with you the issues around the cost share of the matching grant, where the BDS facility itself, we had the matching grant covering initially 50% of the cost, where the SME had to contribute 50% of those costs. But then, of course, you appreciate that throughout the span of this, the life of this fund, we've had global shocks, which affected the liquidity of most of these SMEs. And so during the COVID-19 specifically, we lifted up the matching grant contribution from 50% to 85% across all the enterprises. But interestingly, post the pandemic, we also saw, a lift, a tremendous increase in the utilization or implementation of BDS-related activities, meaning the enterprises were able to contribute the 15%, and the matching grant met the 85% to bring the full cost of the BDS itself. Just to mention is that we had clear guidelines in place on how the BDS was implemented, the procurement process for service providers, how this should be managed, and then the BDS management company, KPMG, and then after Friends Consult, handheld the enterprises. As you appreciate is that most of these SMEs really are family-owned enterprises, and so the systems are not so well formed, and a lot of things could be scanty out there. So it was important that there is hand-holding, and this was also part of the BDS package itself, such that the enterprises are supported on how to identify the right service providers, to monitor their performance, and things like that. So also here I'm sharing with you the types of interventions, which were really broad, but we had outgrower stream management. I mean, these are farmer organizations around these small and medium agribusinesses. It was important that we strengthen the extension of the SME itself, but also the farmers. Are they well trained in terms of their production to improve their productivity at farm level? We also had financial management support, really to ensure that the systems are good enough, and when they go out to access financing from wherever, they have audited accounts for that matter. Commercial strategy, their route to market. So supporting these enterprises to ensure that once they have produced, they have a market that's where they can sell. Then, of course, there is around the human resource development, and then product quality and certification. Most of these enterprises were supported. I need to have their products certified, and some of them have organic certifications for most of their products. And then on top of that, there is also corporate governance to ensure that they're bringing in the right types of boards to support the strategic direction of the company. So these are some of the interventions that we delivered. And indeed, as we had the patient capital that is deployed alongside the BDS, some results are trickling through. Obviously, not a lot of it is more likely to come out, in a few years down the line. But we have a proper database of qualified service providers that is accessible to everyone, since this was actually financed through public funds, the EU funds. So this is readily available, and we can widely share this. And also we saw more than 80,000 smallholder farmers engaged and integrated into the supply chains of the small and medium agribusinesses. And then, of course, as the enterprises expanded their operations, supported through the BDS itself, they're able to employ more, seeing that up to nearly 4,000 jobs created over the period from 2017 to date. The fund closes next year, but of course, the benefits are there to grow up there. But one important thing is that these SMEs were able, some had never unlocked financing from a commercial bank or another impact investor for that matter. And so these SMEs collectively were able to mobilize 59 billion Uganda shillings, is equivalent to about $10 to $11 million additional financing. Since, I mean, their house was in order, they had everything that it took for any other financier to come on board, really de-risking the investment itself. So what are key learnings from the BDS, from the Yield Fund BDS model? Some of them have already been mentioned, but one very key one is the pre-investment BDS support. This is investment readiness or for pipeline development. The fund managers saw over 100 small and medium agribusinesses in Uganda. And only 21, we had BDS needs assessment, really progressed really far, BDS needs assessments conducted for them. And out of those, as you saw in the first slide, 15 SMEs were able to, get capital deployed and were supported through this matching grant facility. Probably we had allocated some resources for pre-investment, then we would have had more companies supported through this fund itself. And then, of course, the linking SME and capital that I don't have to talk, it's very clear that it's important to link the two because capital itself is not sufficient. You need to support these SMEs or you need to provide some BDS or technical assistance. Then the other bit I talked about earlier was the co-creation of the BDS support plan. It creates ownership such that you're not just prescribing, an intervention. It's ownership right from the SME level. And then, of course, in terms of accountability when it comes to implementing some of those. And then the other bit is the cost share. We will hear what it means, but we had the 50, then 85% kind of arrangement. But was that adequate? We will get to discuss that later. And then one other thing I would love to mention is the flexibility we had throughout the BDS implementation period, where we had funds allocated for particular interventions, and for one reason or another, there are more emerging needs. We're able to, move around these funds to ensure that they meet the emerging needs of the SME. And also sometimes you had some SMEs that were not, they didn't have capacity to actually utilize all the BDS resources, yet we had a limited time to implement the BDS activities themselves. We were able to redeploy to other SMEs that had more capacity and impact emerging out of these types of interventions. The last one I will not mention because it's clear that it is important to have a qualified list of service providers, which are locally rooted, because you can't bring in someone who has no understanding of the local context to support an SME. Now, we will have questions during the breakout session that you can go a lot more. You clearly see what you'll have the discussions around. But at this time, I want to hand over to one of the SMEs that we've supported and still supporting, and to hear about the experiences at that time. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Swalleh Budinge. Please have the floor and share your experiences so that the House and everybody else gets to know how it actually worked out for you, if it did or if it did not. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Stella, for such a beautiful presentation. I kept listening, and I'm very, I'm a good listener and a good student of IFAD, PCP, and Yield Fund. But to dive into BDS, allow me to start by saying that the future of BDS does not lie into the continuous subsidy, but it lies into continuously building a demonstrable and a very good value add to the business. So while we were beginning, of course, working with Pearl Capital and Yield Fund and IFAD, we were assigned to KPMG. I want to say they did a very good assessment. They walked us through our business choke points. They were able to identify the different business choke points, and they came up with different solutions. So to us, maybe as Royal Mail Group, they identified our commercial strategy, a lacking commercial strategy, which they enhanced and improved. How we go to market, how we look, how we talk to people, how our teams show up, uh, different things from route to market. They did A to Z on the assessment. They also saw that we had a gap in the board and ESG. So they organized a very good training. I remember it was done by the CEO Forum, CEO Summit. They trained our board members. They helped us scout very good board members. And I yesterday said that we are among the companies that have very, very, very strong board, and the board governance and ESG in our aspects are no longer templates where you want to tick a box, but then they've now been embedded into how we do business and how we run the company. They also saw that in the assessment, KPMG and PCP, they also found out that while we work with more than 200,000 farmers, our interactions with the farmers were basically tied to the commodity milk. So they went ahead and told, let's build an ecosystem that can go beyond the the product. So in that, we were able to come up with things like Suncool. It's an energy company, a subsidiary of under Royal Milk Group that now serves the farmers on the green energy. That was through the BDS. We also came up with a dairy pesa. It focuses on farmer finance. That was through the BDS support, and we were able now to develop those as now companies, running companies. What did we learn, or what did we continue to see from time to time? We realized that BDS can go beyond just a service and become a business model. When you do the right map out of during the BDS assessment, you can easily come out with a very good business model, and now scaling becomes very easy for the business. So from that, I want to say that to us, the BDS activities weren't only just simple things, completing activities, but we are now into right farmer interventions, good business ecosystem, and beyond. We keep on reflecting on the great achievements we had with the Yield Fund and the IFAD through the BDS facility. So from where we are seated as a business, and I would want to also to echo this from Madam Stella and Mark, how you presented quality and standards of BDS facilitators also impact a lot on what will happen or the results we will get. Like you said, most SMEs may not want to pay for the services, but after seeing value, if you brought that to me now, I'm very sure on the questionnaire that was we scanned, and me, of course, on our end, even if you asked the last manager on the station of our station, they will tell you that they're willing to pay for the service. Why? There was value. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella, and Budinge as well. That was great. So like really showing, so like the learning, the deep learning from the Yield Fund, and of course it's always great to hear from the business itself. So like you feel much more confident in taking things forward if you're hearing it right from the client of the BDS.